If I could give one piece of advice when it comes to mastering a craft, no matter the challenge or the deadline or the uncertainty, always say yes to everything. That's when you find your true potential. Hey guys, it's Jen here. Most of you know me on Instagram or YouTube. What's going on, guys? It's Jen Phillips as the welder chick who does custom metal sculptures. If you're completely new here, I'm glad you landed on my page. My name is Jen Phillips. I want you guys to get to know me. We're gonna do some welding. Tell you guys where I came from, how I got here, and kind of just a bit of my story. So keep watching.
That's great.
So I started welding at 15 years old in a pipe fabrication shop. My family was very trade oriented, so my dad worked pipeline construction, my brother was a pipe fitter, so I knew early on, like 8th, 9th grade, that I was gonna go that direction, and I thought that was gonna be my path. I lived out on a farm. We grew up on an acreage outside of town, and I needed a job. Got my license, I needed to pay for gas. So a job opportunity opened up at this pipe shop, and I seen welding videos before. I thought that was pretty cool. So that's what I chose. But the thing is, when you get into a trade, normally you don't start off right into the trade. You start off as a laborer and you're like weed whacking and taking the garbage out sort of thing. I found once you did prove yourself, no matter who you are, man, woman, like you respect hard work. So while I was doing that, like the first couple of months, I would like go over to different tables and watch the welders and like put a helmet on, and like it was just like so intriguing to me. And we had a welder at the house, so I went home and started messing around with that. And the first time I laid down a bead, that was like the coolest thing I'd ever experienced. So although I love doing art, I ultimately have always just loved welding. So I did that until 22 years old. I went and got my journeyman ticket after high school. And then I got pregnant. Ellie came into the picture. So I had my daughter at 23, and I knew I wasn't ready to give up my career, my passion at this point, but I also wanted to be mom to Ellie, be a good mom, be present. So I started dabbling in the garage, and I just started doing little stuff. I actually started making like tables and table bases and stuff like that. I knew I could sell that, and there was a need for that. The art was more of like a hobby thing. I think I've always had that artistic side to me. I loved drawing and all that kind of stuff, and I kind of lost it along the way. And it wasn't until I had my daughter that I came back to like who I really was and found that again. I have 2 kids, and they bring like a different level of purpose to what you're doing, and being, you know, a female and a male trade and all these things have really motivated me to create a life that shows them they are capable of doing anything they want. For me, a huge part of my drive and motivation is to show people like that you can be successful in something very unconventional. And for my kids, that's why I work so hard and dedicate hours and hours and hours, and to have like a role model like that, it's gonna help them, and ultimately that's my goal for my kids. Now I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Not to get cheesy here, but it's where I find my peace. It's no different than archery. People love archery, and I love archery because you're so hyper-focused while you're doing it, you block everything else out. So that is welding for me. When I put down the hood, you're completely focused, and so I think it's pretty cool that I can combine those 2 things. I have the trade background, and the art has kind of found me, and I've kind of combined them both to create some cool shit. So I grew up in nature and hunting and fishing and all that, so that's like my genuine self, and I kind of translated that into my art. I seen this guy was making little birds out of cutlery. Like, I can weld, I can do this shit. So I kind of just started small, and then a family member asked me to do a mallard duck. That one really started the traction online. Jim Shockey got a hold of it and shared it. That kind of like pushed me out there, and how I got to this point was just never turning down anything, even if it seemed like an impossible deadline or like I hadn't done that before. I always said yes to everything. A lot of my inspiration will come from a photograph. But a lot of the times it is like seeing a piece of metal, whether it's like a bearing ball or like a wrench, you know, like something, and like seeing an animal forming out of that small piece. I think it's kind of a weird gift, but I think you need to have some vision. I would say to date, the most challenging piece, I did a dogtooth tuna, and it's like this massive, pretty ugly looking fish. This one was so difficult because I was commissioned by a client. He wanted me to replicate the actual jaw bones of this piece and put together like a whole skeleton of the fish. He couldn't get the actual jaw bones to me in time, so he took pictures and measurements. So what I did is basically replicated each individual jawbone and then pieced it together. So essentially I was doing taxidermy on this fish with metal. Not only that, but it was a wedding gift. So there was a very tight timeline. As far as the pieces that I think kind of blew me up, the headdress definitely was one of them. I think a big part of it is people just like to see the process of it coming together. So I want to create the most realistic version out of metal that I can. And when do something like with a headdress, I mean, that's feathers, they have a lot of movement, and you're working with steel. It's a little bit difficult for a lot of reasons. So the headdress was a big one, and I love doing those, and I never do two of the same. And then the alien was a 4-month project. I'll have to show you guys the initial sketch. Like a pen and paper, this all started just like, I'm like, oh, alien, it'd be cool if he was like coming out of a UFO, you know? That's probably like the piece I'm most proud of because of like the size of it, and it has like an expression on his face. I think it's pretty cool to bring like steel to life. What a lot of people don't realize about metal sculpture, it's very physical. The little clips on social media I put out really don't encapsulate what actually goes on in my shop, and the hours and hours of sweat and blood and tears, you know. I work alone with the exception of one job I did 2 months ago. My brother helped me. This sign was 1,000 pounds to be fair, so it was a little tough to maneuver on my own, but these pieces are like 100, 200 pounds, and it's very physically demanding, but at the end of the day, I've always enjoyed putting a full days of hard work in, and you just feel extremely accomplished by the end of it. I think the coolest part about metal sculpture is that it's gonna be here for eternity, you know? Although I'm creating for the now, hundreds and hundreds of years later, they're gonna find my art. It's like there's a story with every piece. Number one, I want them to acknowledge the work that goes into that, and then just the beauty that can be created from something as ugly as scrap steel, you know? I love thinking of it that way, that thousands of years later, I hope my piece is still here, and you know, people are gonna look at it and appreciate it. Well, we're gonna wrap this thing up here. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a bit about my story. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up, a lot of really awesome builds that you're not gonna wanna miss. So hit that button, wherever it is, and we'll catch you on the next one.